So we're not on the right screen right now. We should actually be logged in rather than showing the login and register. So we need to trick our application into thinking that we're logged in. And the approach you take for this is going to differ based on the authentication provider that you end up using. It's quite possible that you'll end up doing something like jest.mock auth provider so that you can mock out the auth provider's get token method or whatever it is that they use to indicate that the user is actually logged in. But if you can, it's actually better to do the side effect that your auth provider does so that your auth provider actually thinks that the user's logged in. And that might take a little bit of reverse engineering or something. I did a fair amount of that at PayPal. For us, we can import star as auth from the auth provider. And in here, we'll say window local storage dot set item auth local storage key and some fake token. And with that set up, then our auth provider here is going to think that the user's actually logged in and start making requests to get that user's information. So if we save this as it is, then we're going to get a bunch of errors here. Message, please re-authenticate. Oh my goodness, things are in a bad state here. And the reason that they're in such a bad state is because we're actually making a network request, but we're not handling that network request properly. So what we need to do is mock out window.fetch. We'll say window fetch equals an async function that takes a URL and some config. And let's start by console logging URL and config. And just to be complete here, we're going to say original fetch equals window.fetch, and then we'll return original fetch with URL and config. So if we don't handle it ourselves, then we'll call original fetch. All right, so let's save that and see. Now it looks like it's this request right here that is failing on us. So let's mock that out. We'll say if the URL ends with bootstrap, then we can return OK, true. So we know it's a successful request. And a JSON function that is an async function, and it needs to return a user and list items. So for our user, what I'm going to start with right now is just an object that has a user name of Bob. So let's save that and see what happens. Okay, no warnings, that's good. We've got Bob right there. We have our navigation here. And we're seeing a sorry, nothing here, which we'll deal with later. So in review, what we did here was we reverse engineered our auth provider and found that they actually stick some fake token in local storage, and they even expose that local storage key as part of the provider's exports. So we're able to trick the authentication provider into thinking that the user's actually logged in by setting that local storage key to some fake token. And then, to make sure that we handle the request that's made when our user lands on the page in the first place and they're logged in, we override window.fetch to handle when the fetch request is to anything at /bootstrap, and we return a successful response. So here we say OK, true, and JSON is this async function that returns some data. And if we dive into our API client, then that is exactly what we need. We need to have a response that has a JSON function that's async so we can await it, and then response.ok needs to be true so it returns that data. And with all of that set up, now we're in the logged in side of the application.